Let's do this. Get ready to turn left. Turn left. Keep left, and then turn left. Turn left. This is where it ends.
Good morning, everyone. Broadcast with you, Cummins, Cam entered the 9200 kind of for uh, first stop suspension from 89 to 1990. Uh, So, so we're gonna start with Oklahoma today. I do want really yes, and and all that. So, so it's gonna be quiet in this spot. Get the cards
Time
and
to hit the road.
we'll get started
Rerouting.
at the moment.
Keep right, and then turn right. Turn right. Keep left, and then turn left. Turn left. Keep right, and then exit right. Exit right.
So, 12 members, I will have to give you guys a It's a reminders all the stuff around the world. It's a good point for I'm getting golf
Go
tournament
straight on.
tomorrow. I need you guys to watch at 7 a.m. tomorrow. 7 a.m. tomorrow. No, not after lunch. I need you guys to bring your money with you. Uh, like I told her when went to my golf club and the market money. The stars that there is going to talk to the next 3 that you are on, but I need you up 5:30. I mean 6 o'clock, sorry. And all that. Also, those of you working Friday, I have to go take care of my mom at St. Francis. So, those that young week will be Wednesday, August 4th, and I don't know when back this book. When he's me back when here starts and all that. So please check to help you guys with your families and anyway, right. So that's all for now. The man was doing the driving.
Go straight on. Go straight on.
This programming is sponsored by Carr, Riggs & Ingram, CPAs and Advisors, a top 25 nationally ranked full-service accounting and advisory firm offering tax, audit, accounting, consulting, and advisory services. Learn more at cricpa.com.
Which polls that you're looking at, but it did at least appear to me that independents did move by around 5 points towards Donald Trump compared to where we were pre-debate. And of course, independents are such an important group, a group that Trump won in 2016. Then Joe Biden won them by double digits back in 2020. And so if Trump is winning them, you know, by 6-7 points, as appears to be right now what is true in the national aggregate, then that is a very, very good sign for his campaign, and one that will be awfully difficult for Biden to overcome if it does in fact hold.
Do you think the media is blowing out of proportion the polling shifts away from Biden? I mean, because that's been the headline, the shifts after the debate.
I think what's going on for a lot of folks is that they're realizing that Donald Trump's actually leading the public than the average.
Go straight on.
Even if there hasn't been a massive movement, I think there's finally recognition in some quarters that Donald Trump is ahead. Not by a ton, but by more than enough, especially given that he seems to be running stronger in the important battleground states than he is nationally.
And demographically, who are those independents who might be moving towards Trump? Are they young? Are they voters of color? Who are those voters?
They're both, right? Younger people, voters of color, especially Hispanic voters, tend to be the voters who are more likely to identify as independent than perhaps in past years, because independents, a larger share of them are younger or Hispanic than the populace at large. And so there's no doubt that there is that overlap there, right, in a sort of nice Venn diagram. And so that is a significant part of that movement that we've seen away from Joe Biden versus 4 years ago.
Who are the voters that are sticking with Biden even after this really bad debate performance?
Progressives, very liberal voters, older black voters, older black women in particular. Most Democrats. I mean, that is the situation. It's not like magically these Democrats are going to be like, you know what, I want Donald Trump to be the nominee or want him to be the president. Donald Trump is still a very unpopular man in this country, at least according to the polling data.
So how do we square the fact that he's unpopular according to polling data, and yet he's leading in the polls?
The way you square it is that you have Joe Biden, an incumbent president, whose disapproval rating is in the mid-50s, whose approval rating is 40% or below. And there's just no president who's been reelected with those types of numbers ever. And so Donald Trump, despite himself being unpopular, finds himself in a similar position that he did in 2016 with the Democratic Party, for reasons, picked a nominee that left the door open for somebody who is as unpopular as Donald Trump is. It's really that simple. Donald Trump just has many more paths to victory at this point than Joe Biden has.
Yeah.
But again, in this country in which elections are won and lost, in which not had a single major party candidate win an election by double digits since before either you or I were born, a shift of a few points could make all the difference in the world.
Harry Enton, senior political data reporter for CNN. We spoke last week while he was in Milwaukee covering the RNC. I'm Claire Malone, and this is the New Yorker Radio
Go straight
Hour.
on.
More to come.
The New Yorker Radio Hour is supported by Progressive Insurance. With Snapshot from Progressive, safe drivers get personalized rates on car insurance. More at Progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE. Snapshot is not available in California or from all agents.
How to have fun in the sun and be safe.
Welcome to Health Matters. I'm Dr. Stephen Spann, Dean of the Tillman J. Fertitta Family College of Medicine.
And I'm Dr. Kenya Steele, family physician and assistant dean of outreach and student pathways. It's summertime and hot in Houston. We want to protect our skin from sunburn and skin cancer. We also need to minimize the risk of heat disorders such as heat exhaustion and heat stroke. Here are some tips. Wear sunscreen with an SPF of 30 or higher. Drink plenty of fluids. Water is best, and avoid caffeine. Eat small, light meals before going outside. Wear a hat and sunglasses. Wear light-colored clothing. Take frequent breaks from strenuous activity. Let's have fun in the sun this summer and be safe.
This has been Health Matters from the Tillman J. Fertitta Family College of Medicine. For more episodes, visit HoustonPublicMedia.org/Health Matters.
Neighbors helping neighbors.
Volunteering in Ukraine has become a part of our everyday life.
Feasts with new friends.
Hot peppers, tomatoes, garlic, and they're grinding all of that into a pulp.
All around the world.
In News, in Guerrero State, Mexico.
Beirut.
St. Petersburg.
Baumholder, Germany.
Mumbai.
Lagos.
We'll take you there on all things considered from news.
Weekdays beginning at 3 p.m. on News 88.7.
This is the New Yorker Radio Hour. I'm Claire Malone, a staff writer with the magazine. In presidential election years, we all want to know what's going to happen, but we're drowning in poll numbers. National polls, swing state polls, favorability ratings, issue polls, you name it, we've got numbers for it. But it's really difficult to separate the wheat from the chaff. There are partisan polls, which may well be biased, junky online polls, and there are high-quality polls that still take the time to call hundreds of people and ask them questions. But even those types of polls can seem suspicious. How can you get an accurate sample when so few of us actually pick up strange numbers calling our phones? Are pollsters putting their fingers on the scales? I called up Ann Selzer because I wanted to hear from her how polling actually works now, how the polls know what they know. Selzer is one of the best people to explain that. Her company does the polling for the Des Moines Register, and over the years, she's established a track record for accuracy.
There's a particular cluster of people here in Des Moines whose nickname for me is Harbinger of Doom. Now, these are all people who have worked on Democratic campaigns and thought that they were coasting to a win. And then my final poll comes out and it shows their Republican opponent, in fact, leading with a solid lead. So it's kind of an example of what happens if you don't have good polling. Would they have done things differently in their campaign had they been more apprised of what was actually happening?
One of the reasons Selzer has been so effective as a pollster is a method she calls polling forward. She looks at the current demographics of the country instead of who turned out in previous elections.
We make no assumptions about what the electorate is going to look like. We don't look at past elections, and there are pollsters that do, that go back and look at the exit polls and say, well, this is what the racial makeup was, so we're going to make our data look like that. So I call what I do polling forward. The future electorate is going to reveal itself through that methodology.
That's interesting because my sort of familiarity is with this idea of, hey, this election in 2016 or 2020 looked this way. We're going to weight our data based on that. How do you actually concretely poll forward? What does that look like?
The moment that it was clear to me that my method was onto something was in 2008. We got caucuses, and our final poll was showing a surprise that Barack Obama was winning easily. But the bigger surprise in our data was that 60% of the people who planned to caucus on the Democratic side, it would be the first time they had ever gone to caucus. And that 60% just created a furor and an uproar. And there was lots of media talk, lots of campaign memos going about saying, pay no attention to this poll because this is a number unheard of. I had one of Hillary Clinton's state co-chairs, a friend of mine who's been a client, call to say, I've knocked on 99 doors. I haven't found this lurking Obama support. And I said, well, tell me about the 99 doors. He said, oh, we're focusing on previous caucus attenders and registered Democrats.
Yeah.
And I made no assumption.
What are you seeing now in your polling forward for this election cycle?
We're seeing a couple of things that are interesting at the way the electorate is aligning. So traditionally, older people have been more on the Republican side, and conventional wisdom is the older you get, the more conservative you get. The age group of 65 and over is Joe Biden's strongest demographic group. And younger people are aligning more on the Republican side. So I think this is a perfect example of if you're not doing polling, you're going to behave the way you behaved in the past and assume that the older people who show up in proportionately larger numbers on election day are going to be voting Republican. And the opposite is true.
I don't think it's a secret to you that polling has become controversial in American life. So sell me on it. What are the benefits of good polling? Give me your best pitch.
I think it depends on how high you think the stakes are. If you want to have a good idea of the way the electorate is moving, because it does move, you need to have polling that will reveal that. So I think it's very important to stay on top of how the mood of the nation is changing, how the mood in states is changing, and if you don't know what it is, you're just shooting in the dark.
Talk me through how polling actually works. And what I mean by that is who pays for it, who writes the questions, who makes all the actual phone calls.
Well, I can talk about nationally. With the Iowa poll, we put together a poll committee. We all come to the table with ideas. And from that conversation, I began crafting the questionnaire. And I'm keeping a lot of things in my mind as I do that. I need the interviewer to easily pronounce the words and that the syntax is easy for them to follow.
Yeah.
I need the respondent to know what the heck we're talking about. At the end of the day, we want to look at the opinions of a few people and project it to the opinions of the entire electorate. That's the beauty of random sampling. You can end up with a good cross-section. So we get a sample of real phone numbers, we drop the last 2 digits, and we put on random digits. So whether you're a listed number or not, whether you're a cell phone or not, we have the ability to get all of those phone numbers and then draw a sample from it.
I want to ask about that because, you know, it's so easy to screen unknown numbers these days, and that obviously didn't used to be the case.
And
so
then exit
what
right.
do you do to deal with that relatively new social behavior that we all have? How does that affect polls?
Exit
Well,
right.
it's not relatively new. So
Yes, that's true.
That's been going on a long time. As soon as people got caller ID, that's decades.
Yeah.
People say, well, I just don't answer the phone if it says unknown caller. And I said, well, fortunately, for every person like you, there's a doppelganger. I think the important point I want to make is that our polls are known for their accuracy. And if there was a skew in who would answer and who wouldn't, it could not be accurate. And so it makes me worry less. I worry.
Sure.
I worry, but I worry less. When we call you, we want to find out if you're a likely voter. In our world, that means if you don't say definitely, you're not a likely voter to us, and we're going to terminate the call. But we will have captured, before we hang up on you, your age, your sex, and what area of the country you live in. So now that's the general population. And from the census, we know what that should look like. So we weight everybody we talk to, whether you're a likely voter or not.
What do we mean by weighting?
So weighting is, to novices, it sounds very anti-democratic. Well, some people count more,
right,
and some people count less. So it's not one person, one vote. So if we have too many older people, let's say, we'll count their vote a little less. We're going to weight them down. So give some other groups a little bit more weight overall. It sounds complicated. It's kind of simple.
Yeah.
Everybody does it.
Well, let me ask this. In an ideal world, would you have any rules that you'd want reporters to follow when they talk and write about polls for their audience?
About 1 million.
About 3.
Well, I'll give you one that's controversial.
Sure.
And there are people who say it's a 2-point race. You can't really call that a 2-point race. You have to call that a statistical tie. But it could also be true that it's a 4-point race, that the gap is actually larger. If you want to say it's a tie, go ahead. But you should also say that it's equally likely that the race is a wider margin than reported. And to do one and not the other is exposing bias.
Have you ever gotten a call for a poll yourself?
Like last year.
Really?
The Iowa poll called me up.
What'd you do?
The first time ever. I said, I'm so sorry. I'm not able to participate in this poll because of my job. But thank you.
You didn't say I run this poll?
I did not.
Ann Selzer's company runs the Iowa poll.
What's the point of the horse race? People are interested in the horse race.
Journalists like me are constantly getting scolded for covering the horse race. In other words, talking about the polling results all the time. Who's up and who's down. The argument is that the horse race distracts from substantive reporting on issues or from the real stakes of an election. So I ran that argument by Harry Enton, who we heard from earlier. He's with CNN, and he was my former colleague at 538.
I hate to blow some people's bubbles here, but I very rarely get asked by my friends, Harry, in this latest poll, what was the top issue?
Recompute.
Their number one question, and oftentimes their only question, is who is ahead and who is behind. If legit news organizations were not going to do the polls, then that poll would be filled by other folks who might not spend as much on the polls, might do shoddier polls, and then all of a sudden we have a very different view of where the race is heading into Election Day than we might otherwise should and could have. I think Donald Trump has actually provided a very good reason for why we should care about the horse race. We are at an all-time low, at least from some sections of our country who believe elections and the vote counting is legitimate, which for everything that we've seen, it is. Donald Trump's case to say this election was stolen is significantly higher if, of going into the election, we didn't have a good baseline level to understand where the race actually stood.
So you're saying it gives us data prior to Election Day that in fact legitimizes the results after Election Day?
In my opinion, absolutely. Absolutely does that. And it does that on both sides of the aisle, right?
Harry, you're obviously steeped in polls. You know how to differentiate different polls. But what about people who are just sort of lost in all the swirling numbers? What should they be doing with all of this data that we have?
You know, look, we've spoken about this 1,000 times in our lives. You know, average. Yeah, you take a look at the average.
Of the average of the polls.
The average of the polls. That'll give you the best indication. That's always what I try to do. And you can find something that you might not have ever found before. But as a casual lay consumer, you average the polls and read the polls from the people that you trust.
And there are places that do the average of the polls for you, somewhere like Real Clear Politics or...
the New York Times. CNN has a poll of polls.
Okay, so there's places for people to go. They don't have to sit there with their calculator.
No. Although granted, with our phones these days, folks, you know, you learned math in school. Why don't you put it to some good usage?
Okay, there you go. A public service announcement from Harry.
Math is fun.
I want to ask about how people should be consuming polls. I think there's more polls than ever now. Should people be paying attention to these big national polls? Or should they really, if they want to be a smart consumer and know what's going on, should they only really care about who's up and who's down in swing states?
Look, this election is going to be determined in the Electoral College.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of what it is that you're looking for. If you're looking for what are the issues in those swing state polls, because at the end of the day, we have seen numerous times in recent history where the swing states go one way or the Electoral College goes one way and the popular vote, the national popular vote, goes another way. Every single election since 1988 in this country on the presidential level has been decided by single digits nationally. It is the longest such stretch.
I think the trends that have stood out to a lot of people who watch this stuff closely are the changing sentiments of black voters and Latino voters. And black voters in particular have historically been a pretty reliable Democratic voting bloc. And the top line in this election is that we're not seeing as much support for Biden as you might think. But I wanted to get you to break it down a little bit.
One of the trends that we do know is that black voters, traditionally speaking, black voters who are more religious actually tend to, if anything, be slightly more Democratic, depending when you control for some variables, than black voters who aren't so religious, which is the complete opposite pattern that you see among whites and Hispanics. Now, all of a sudden, church going is heading down. The church helps keep black voters into the Democratic fold in a way that I think is very unfamiliar with a lot of white audiences. Now, all of a sudden, you're seeing dropping religiosity. Same is true with younger black voters. Now, all of a sudden, that thing that is keeping them in the fold may not be keeping them in the fold any longer. So all of a sudden, you sort of have all of these different things coming together, which is lower religiosity, you have movement away from Joe Biden among younger Americans, generally speaking, and you have fading memories of the civil rights movement. I'm not saying there aren't any other factors, but those three, I think, are a starting point to help understand what it is that we're seeing.
Very interesting. Most people in the U.S. don't have a bachelor's degree. What's so interesting to me is that Joe Biden's appeal was always kind of Scranton Joe, down to earth, working class, but now his support is trending much more elite, right? You know, how is he doing? Let's maybe talk broadly with voters who don't have a bachelor's degree, and how has that shifted since 2020?
So, you know, what we're seeing is across the board, voters without a college degree shifting more and more towards the Republican column. You are seeing that with white voters without a college degree. We're seeing, you know, I wouldn't be shocked if a margin if Joe Biden lost him by well more than 30 points this time around.
And white voters with a college degree used to be like a lean Republican demographic, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about...
They flipped a little bit.
A little bit.
They have.
A little bit.
They flipped. I want to go back to young voters. Are young voters moving away from the Democrats to the Republicans? Are they just sort of saying, I'm unaffiliated? Do they not like Biden, but maybe they'd come back to the Democrats once there's a different candidate? What's going on there?
There's certainly a larger share that say that they're independent, just generally speaking.
51%, according to the latest Gallup data.
There you go. Now, if you were to look at the polling data, what it would tell you, especially in a lot of these Senate races, is that, if you go to, let's say, Nevada, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Joe Biden is doing worse than the Democratic candidate for Senate in all of them. And who he's doing especially poor amongst, on average, tends to be those core parts of the Democratic coalition that we've spoken about here, voters of color and younger voters as well. So if we have a different Democratic candidate, could things differ? Absolutely. It's oftentimes difficult to know if we're hitting a mere bump in the road for Democratic support among younger voters or whether this is something larger and unforeseen. But, if I could take a step back, in 2000,
Keep left.
young voters split evenly between Al Gore and George W. Bush. By 2008, young voters...
The Obama coalition,
those under the age of 25, went for Barack Obama by, I think, the mid-30s. So you can...
Are we a little bit living... Have we, for the past decade or so, sort of been living in the shadow or the conventional wisdom of the Obama coalition, and now things are just maybe reverting to a historical norm?
Or a new history, right? These coalitions last until they don't. If you go to 1976, the Democratic coalition for Jimmy Carter that beat Gerald Ford was the Southeast plus the industrial North. The West was a wasteland for Jimmy Carter. Gerald Ford, I think, basically won every state west of Texas except for Hawaii. That obviously is no longer the case. The question you have to ask yourself now is whether or not we're in a new coalition or an emerging coalition. And it's certainly plausible that we are, and in 5 years we'll go, we should have seen it coming.
I mean, I have to say, it sort of feels like that to me, that we might be in the midst, that 2024 could potentially be one of those elections where you look back and say, that's where the trends really sort of solidified themselves. That's when it was kind of an inflection point.
It is possible that we are. Now watch, of course, we'll get to election day, and then the exits and everything else will look the same, and we'll say, oh, it was just a false start. But at this particular point, I think you're onto something, Claire.
President Biden and the Biden campaign, they keep saying they don't believe the polls are broken, they're not accurate. What do you make of that view? Are they deluding themselves?
The polls are the same polls that were taken 4 years ago that had Joe Biden's favorable rating about 15 points higher.
So when he says, the polls are broken now, you're saying they're not more broken than they were 4 years ago when
Correct.
they were favorable?
He loved the polls. He loved the polls. In the same way that Donald Trump loved the polls. Remember, Donald Trump quoted polls every freaking time in 2015 on his rise to the Republican nomination. Then all of a sudden the polls went in a direction he didn't like. It turns out that at least when it comes to polling and reading polls and complaining about polls, that Joe Biden and Donald Trump have very similar viewpoints. When the polls are good for them, they like the polls. When the polls are bad for them, all of a sudden the polls are not so great and they complain about them.
And this is a thing that I know people who deal in polls or who are polling analysts, who are pollsters themselves, get really riled up about, which is when people say the polls missed this result, the polls were inaccurate. I mean, what's your response to that? Give me two examples. One where the polls were really accurate, and another when the polls were really off.
The polls in 2016, the national polls, were pretty much right on.
But people were surprised by the results of the 2016 election.
Yes, the polling in those battleground states did show that Hillary Clinton was ahead.
Go straight
on. If you know how much a poll can miss by, or how much an average can miss by in a state, you know that it can miss by, depending, 3, 4, 5, 6 percentage points is not something that is crazy.
Finding a new route.
If you recall, at 538, which we were a part of, if I remember correctly, Hillary Clinton had a 71% chance of winning on the eve of the election, and Donald Trump had a 29% chance.
You and I were in the same newsroom, and I still remember feeling surprised when I realized Trump was going to win. Was that an emotional response?
Yes.
Because I had, I was consuming all of these polls. I still was consuming the media narrative that I guess helped create that Hillary Clinton was probably going to win.
Yes, that's part of it, but I think also this was something that was so unique, and when you combine that with the fact that if you lived in New York City at the time, you lived among people who had a college degree, which many in the media did, then yeah, I think that it becomes very, very easy to get lulled into a sense of what am I actually seeing here on these pieces of paper? What do these polls actually tell?
So people should be more aware of these margins there. Okay, I want to hit you with one last question. When do the polls actually count? When are voters really most likely to be locking into the positions that they'll have on Election Day?
Here's the deal. The deal is that you really should wait until after the conventions before really understanding where this race actually stands. Labor Day is another way to sort of look at it, right? But don't let the polls run your life.
Touch grass, kids.
Touch grass.
Buckle up. Harry Enton, thank you so much for coming. It's so great to see you.
The pleasure was all mine. Thank you.
Harry Enton is the senior political data reporter at CNN, and he hosts their podcast, Margins of Error. This is the New Yorker Radio Hour. I'm Claire Malone. More in a moment.
The New Yorker Radio Hour is supported by BetterHelp, committed to supporting mental health through therapy. Clients are matched with one of 35,000 therapists and can communicate via video, chat, or phone at betterhelp.com/public.
Hi, this is Steve Inskeep with NPR's Morning Edition, which reminds you of the power of one human voice. You turn on the radio some morning or your device, and you're listening to Morning Edition, and you hear one person telling a story from the other side of the world or from a neighborhood near you, and that voice brings you understanding of the news. Listen to Morning Edition every day.
Weekdays 5 till 9 a.m. on News 88.7.
In addition to bringing you News 88.7, Houston Public Media also broadcasts PBS to all of Greater Houston. Want to watch shows like All Creatures Great and Small, Grantchester, or Masterpiece? What about Broadway performances or Austin City Limits? Get exclusive streaming access to over 4,000 PBS shows and films with Houston PBS Passport. For as little as $5 a month, you can stream all these and more from the PBS video app. Go to houstonpublicmedia.org/passport.
Support comes from the Gilbert and Sullivan Society of Houston, presenting the comic opera Ruddigore, a story of curses, ghosts, and bridesmaids. July 20th through 28th at the Cullen Performance Hall. Tickets at gilbertandsullivan.org. Support comes from MD Anderson Cancer Center, where a single blood donation at MD Anderson Cancer Center can help make a life-saving difference for cancer patients. Information on donating blood, appointments, and more at mdandersongiveblood.com.
This is the New Yorker Radio Hour. I'm Claire Malone. Catalina Iturralde is the protagonist of the new novel, Catalina. In the summer before her senior year of college, she's working as an intern at America's third most prestigious literary magazine. That's how she describes it anyway. It's a magazine full of, quote, famously difficult men who wrote tens of thousands of words about being sad and horny. I think we know the type. Come the fall, she'll be back at Harvard to plot her future. If all of this suggests a life of rare and kind of annoying privilege, Catalina's situation is actually a lot more complicated. She's an undocumented immigrant to the U.S., raised in Queens by her grandparents.
Turn right.
And what her future looks like after graduation is very uncertain.
In the summer of 2010, the year Instagram launched, there was a cricket invasion in Queens. Something to do with global warming, and if you believed my grandfather, yet another sign that America was lagging behind Cuba in scientific advances. He was not a communist. He just had a bit of a thing for Fidel. Dozens of crickets were under the floors and in the walls of our apartment. The landlord sent an exterminator, but it had little effect on their fornication. The sound was intolerably loud. My grandfather said that back in Ecuador, summer nights in Esmeraldas were so loud, it sounded like, well, what it was, the beach and the jungle. I had not been to Esmeraldas, where he spent every summer as a child. Like him, I was undocumented, so I could not go to Esmeraldas, probably ever. I would probably never see the Amazon, and thus I would never really know a summer night. He would always have that over me. He knew in his flesh what I could only read about, and I read a lot.
Catalina is the second book by Carla Cornejo Villavicencio. She first gained attention with an essay titled I'm an Illegal Immigrant at Harvard, published anonymously by the Daily Beast. Then her first book, The Undocumented Americans, was a finalist for the National Book Award. Her novel, Catalina, comes out this month, and she spoke with our host, David Remnick.
Now, the main character in the book, Catalina, is undocumented and completing her senior year at Harvard. Why did you decide to make a novel out of this rather than a memoir?
Well, I think that I have never really been interested in writing a memoir because I still think I'm too young. And I still think that what I will be remembered for hasn't happened yet. I imagine something like arson, who knows? But I hope it's not The Undocumented Americans. It's a great book, I am sure. But I'm just, I'm still 34. I can do so many things. This novel, vaguely autobiographical, maybe seriously autobiographical. And then I really wanted to lean into that because usually with my nonfiction, it is in the first person. And in nonfiction, I can't really withhold. I cannot stray from the facts. I wanted to write a novel also because I passionately felt that I wanted to write something that would impress Philip Roth and also terrify him a little bit before he passed.
The book is set in 2010 and Obama's trying to pass the DREAM Act. And our character, our hero, our heroine, is watching this play out in Washington while studying for finals. Immigration status is hanging above her head as she's working, as she's studying. And eventually it becomes too much for her. She breaks down. Is this an experience that you lived through?
I would say that I would describe my entire 4 years as a breakdown journey with peaks and valleys. It was something that definitely happened when I was in college. The DREAM Act was being debated. There were versions of the DREAM Act that seemed likelier to pass. All of that was happening in the news. I mean, honestly, by that point, I really tried to drown out the propaganda. I mean, I feel like to be an immigrant at any point in time, but particularly during an election year or when somebody is trying to make a name out of themselves in the political arena, you become very used to the rhetoric being very charged and dehumanizing. And so I disconnect. I think probably other people do as well.
You disconnect this time around with Trump looking like, there's no guarantee for him, but who looks poised to win in November? Quite possibly.
I don't get anything out of plugging in my nervous system into a war I'm not there to die in, so to speak. I think that I don't like thinking about politics in a recreational way. It doesn't soothe any part of me. It doesn't fill me with information. It doesn't do anything other than, it's sort of immigration news. It doesn't do anything other than absolutely terrify me. Also, a lot of the news that accompanies any news of immigration are just pictures of people huddling on the ground or looking scared. I think every essay that I've ever published has probably been accompanied by a photo of a migrant child with big eyes looking at the camera, sad. And so I try to submerge my brain into a different kind of brine,
You did a really interesting thing. When you were a senior at Harvard, you wrote an anonymous essay called "I'm an Illegal Immigrant at Harvard" and published it at the Daily Beast without your name. Why did you publish it anonymously? And tell me about the urge to do it.
I think urge is a good word. I felt like the Titanic was sinking, and I've always had this image myself. The Titanic was sinking, and there's somebody on the Titanic playing violin.
So what's the year, and what was the Titanic?
This was 2011, and the Titanic was the DREAM Act was not going to pass, and I was graduating from Harvard without any employment prospects, possibilities, even remotely.
Which meant what for your life?
I mean, probably, the way I imagined it was like me working as a seamstress in a factory, like in the Triangle shirt coat factory. I pictured like me working with my dad at a restaurant, but being really bad at it because I'm not coordinated and etc. And I was thinking about that I am not equipped to do.
And like a lot of people, and particularly people in those circumstances, you feel responsible for your parents economically and otherwise, culturally, raising each other in some way.
Yes.
What responsibility do you feel toward them?
The truth is that I don't feel any responsibility towards them.
Why is that?
Because the narrator in my head knows that that is a script, and I refuse to follow it. So I understand that the script is I'm supposed to feel indebted to my parents and supposed to be haunted by their sacrifice and supposed to look at their hands and feel shame and guilt about my own life. And that is why I don't feel that. I catch a cliche and then I can't allow myself to feel it.
Crush.
Yeah.
Now, you eventually wrote The Undocumented Americans, which came out in 2020. It's part memoir and includes other stories about undocumented. Talk about deciding to expand that book out to be more than just your story, which seemed to be part of the inventiveness of it and the richness of it to me.
Yes, I think that I really wanted to feel myself connected to other people. It was a moment of just genuine need for seeing other immigrants in this country who were surviving and who were living full, rich, complicated lives. Because again, there was this narrative in the culture that I needed to counteract for myself, primarily. And so I think that is one of the reasons why I also gave of myself when I was, traveling across all of these cities talking to undocumented immigrants, is because they also were seeing me, and they were also seeing an immigrant who was working hard, not only in the traditional sense, but also working really hard to be happy and to make art. And that meant a lot to me. I think it also took a lot out of me. I think one of the reasons why people really responded to the book was because I allowed myself to be vulnerable, and I allowed myself to be affected by the people that I was interviewing in a way that I understand isn't healthy for journalists to do the majority of the time.
You think?
I think so. I think that you probably have to have a certain level of emotional disconnect if you're going to not burn out and if you're going to keep doing this work consistently. I don't think you can necessarily afford to feel everything.
It's really true. I mean, the journalists I've met along the way who have felt everything, there is that danger.
I think so. I think when I think of journalists who've been doing really heavy reporting, it takes a toll. And it did take a toll on me when I allowed myself to be affected and to care about these immigrants, all of whom could have disappeared overnight.
Tell me about a particular interview, a particular relationship that you had that really affected you.
I think the Miami chapter, I meet a group of immigrant women from Argentina and Uruguay, and they were all in their 50s. And most of them were really on this journey of self-discovery. Some of them were divorced, some of them were widows, and they had taken activism as a way of doing work and, doing great work, but also having a sense of community and a sense of purpose. And they wanted to take me clubbing. They were showing me around Miami, and they're like, that's where Mark Anthony lives. And they were like, why aren't you living your life? You're so young. I don't know, maybe I was 27 or something. They were like, you should be out partying in a dress that short. I was just really moved by, they reminded me of my mom. My mom wants me to have all the freedoms that she didn't have. And sometimes that freedom means going out to party.
Mm-hmm. How did those interviews inform the writing of fiction?
When I was creating the grandmother character, I did try to honor all of the immigrant women who've made a mark on me, or the Latina women who've made a mark on me throughout my life. And I wanted the character to be as full-blooded and as complicated and funny and wicked and glamorous. That's how I think of when I think of the women I met in Miami, and that's what I think of when I think of my mom. So I wanted to create a character that embodied that deep sense of dignity.
I know you are in a constant war with cliche, but one of the big changes that's taken place since your last book came out is that you've got a green card.
I'm a citizen now.
I say that because being undocumented was such a big part of your identity for so long. Describe what that change means to you in your life and psychologically and just in your day-to-day.
I feel scared when I'm in the airport. The feeling of being deportable is difficult to convey. And it doesn't disappear overnight. I think of my citizenship as something that can be revoked at any time.
How long have you had it?
A couple years.
And you still feel it?
I think I'll always feel it. I think that's something that doesn't change with actual change in the paperwork or in your status, but I was raised by undocumented people, and I was an undocumented person. Those were the circumstances under which my brain developed. There's this Latin American paranoia that comes from my parents grew up under a dictatorship, and I've heard all of these stories.
In Ecuador.
Yeah, and then there's also being undocumented here, where the idea that I could disappear at any time, my parents could disappear at any time. I don't think that I'm necessarily capable of feeling that kind of permanence.
Carla, you said, I think long ago, that you don't want to be a poster child for the undocumented. You've now written 2 books that arguably are about that, or at least in part about that. What do you want to do next? Or do you feel that you have one subject and you want to dig that trench for a good long while?
No, I think that I'm really, when I did the press for undocumented Americans, I saw that people were really interested in the fact that I'd gone to Harvard. They really wanted to talk about that.
So you wanted to scratch that itch?
Yeah.
For them?
Yeah, I wanted to do that. I wanted to say, a little bit, be careful what you wish for. This is what you wanted. And now I wanted people to read something that they couldn't unread. And so I'm not sure what the next book is going to be, but I think that I am very motivated. I continue to be motivated by a general sense of mischief and seeing what I can get away with. It's very strange and it's very rare. I do think that I'm Miss American Dream, all of these great institutions that I've walked through, etc. And it's well, now that I'm here, what do I want to do with myself?
Carla, thank you.
David, thank you for having me.
David Remnick spoke with Carla Cornejo Villavicencio. Her new novel is called Catalina. David will be back next week. This is the New Yorker Radio Hour. I'm Claire Malone. Thanks for listening.
The New Yorker Radio Hour is a co-production of WNYC Studios and The New Yorker. Our theme music was composed and performed by Merrill Garbus of Tune Yards. The New Yorker Radio Hour is supported in part by the Chirina Endowment Fund.
Actor LeVar Burton landed one of TV's most iconic roles when he was just 19 years old. But he says playing Kunta Kinte on Roots at such a young age meant he had to acknowledge a hard reality of showbiz.
I may never do anything as big or as important or as impactful as this.
LeVar Burton talks Roots, Rainbows, and the Final Frontier on All Things Considered from NPR News.
We'll have that for you this afternoon at 4 p.m. right here on News 88.7. Jason Clark here with you on this Sunday morning. Temperatures currently in the upper 80s. Looking at a high this afternoon of 90 degrees. There is a 50% chance of showers and thunderstorms existing throughout the rest of the day, starting in the next hour. That's going to be pretty much the same forecast for the start of your week. We're looking at some cooler temperatures. Your biggest high is 90 on Monday, the Tuesday 86, and Wednesday 82. But there is a high chance of rain, so those showers coming in will hopefully cool some things off. This is your NPR station, KUHF Houston News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston. It is 10 o'clock.
From NPR and WBEZ Chicago, this is Wait, Don't Tell Me, the NPR News Quiz. I'm Bill Curtis.
And I'm Karen Chi, filling in for Peter Sagal. It's convention season, which means once again, America's strategic bunting reserves are at a dangerous low. We'll ask what all the confetti was about, and legendary Olympic sprinter Allison Felix gives us tips in case I want to run real fast to another country. Plus, even though no one listens, Bill says what he says every week about the Listener Limerick Challenge.
This is the last one of those we're doing.
We'll ask who has really had enough on our quiz right after this hour's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Nora Rahm. Senator Joe Manchin is adding his name to the list of lawmakers who say President Biden should withdraw his bid for re-election. The former Democrat and independent told ABC's This Week he thinks it's time to pass the torch.
It's time. It's just time. A new generation to come in that basically can start and let him do the job he intended to do to heal the country.
He said Biden would end up with a legacy as one of the finest and truly a patriotic American. President Biden is expected to return to the campaign trail this week after recovering from COVID. Vice President Kamala Harris was on Cape Cod, Massachusetts yesterday for a fundraiser. NPR's Asma Khalid has more.
The vice president is not publicly engaging with the intra-party fight or the speculation that she could take over the Democratic ticket. Instead, she spent Saturday afternoon speaking to a crowd of Democratic donors on Cape Cod, warning them about what Donald Trump and his running mate, J.D. Vance, might do in the White House. She described them as having an extremist anti-LGBTQ agenda. If you claim to stand for unity, she said, then you need to know it's more than just a word. Her remarks come as Biden remains isolated with COVID and as Trump rallies with his vice presidential pick, J.D. Vance, in Michigan. Asma Khalid, NPR News.
Trump and J.D. Vance appeared together at a rally in Grand Rapids last night, 1 week after the attempted assassination of Trump. The Trump campaign has said it requested more resources from the Secret Service in the past. A day after the shooting, the Secret Service denied that it rejected the requests. Now, the Secret Service is acknowledging that sometimes additional resources were, at times, unavailable, and state or local enforcement officers refused for protection. The director of the Secret Service, Kimberly Cheadle, is scheduled to testify tomorrow before a House panel investigating the assassination attempt. Israel says a powerful airstrike on a major port in Yemen yesterday will keep Houthi rebels from receiving weapons there for an extended period. NPR's Greg Myrie reports from Tel Aviv.
The Israeli bombing raid ignited huge fires at oil and gas storage tanks in Yemen's port of Hodeidah on the country's Red Sea coast. Israel says this port is where the Houthi militia receives weapons from Iran. The port is also critical for food and other civilian goods imported into the impoverished country. Yemen's health ministry says dozens of people were injured, many with severe burns. And a Houthi spokesman said the group would continue attacks on Israel. A Houthi drone struck near the Tel Aviv beachfront Friday, killing one Israeli man. Israel says the Houthis have fired 200 missiles and drones at Israel in recent months. Greg Myrie, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
This is NPR News in Washington. The top court in Bangladesh today scaled back job quotas that had triggered deadly clashes between student protesters and the government. Ankarka Decker reports.
Bangladesh Supreme Court has scaled back the 30% job quotas for family members of veterans who had fought against Pakistan in the 1971 War of Independence. The court ruled that only 5% of government jobs would now be reserved for families of veterans. The protest started last month after a High Court overturned a 2018 government decision to scrap these quotas. They were led by students frustrated by job shortages, who argue that the quotas serve the ruling party. The unrest spread across the country after the police and ruling party activists clashed with the protesters. Since Thursday, the government had imposed a curfew and cut off phone and internet for most citizens. For NPR News, I'm Omkar Khandekar in Mumbai.
Tensions are high on the Korean peninsula. South Korea says North Korea sent more balloons across the border this morning, most likely carrying trash. The South Korean military says it will respond by expanding its propaganda broadcasts through loudspeakers along the border. The Philippine government says it's reached an agreement with China to de-escalate tensions in the South China Sea. The Philippines maintains an outpost there, a long-grounded and rusting warship. The Chinese Coast Guard has been trying to stop the Philippines from delivering food and water to the crew. Today, the Philippines said the two countries have agreed on a provisional arrangement for resupplying ships. No details have been provided. I'm Nora Rahm, NPR News in Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the William T. Grant Foundation, supporting research to improve the lives of young people. Online at WTGrantsFoundation.org. And listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
PBS NewsHour.
Now more than ever, you need news you can trust.
PBS NewsHour.
Unbiased, in-depth news that delivers substance over sensationalism.
PBS NewsHour.
Cutting through the noise with news that matters. World-class journalism that brings unrivaled national and global perspective home to you.
PBS NewsHour.
Elections, conflict, climate. Trust a news source that provides fair, thoughtful coverage of the events that impact our lives.
PBS NewsHour. Weeknights at 6 on Houston Public Media TV 8.
The following program was taped in front of an audience of real live people.
From NPR and WBEZ Chicago, this is Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, the NPR News Quiz. I'm the voice of your aunt's sexual awakening. I'm Bill Curtis, and here's your host at the Studebaker Theater at the Fine Arts Building in Chicago, Illinois, filling in for Peter Sagal, Karen Chi.
Hi, I'm Karen Chi, and yes, I'm filling in for Peter Sagal this week. We are basically the same person, but I'm stronger and meaner. We've got a great show for you today. Later on, Olympic track and field star Allison Felix will be joining us to play our game and make us feel bad about our mile times. But first, it's your turn, so give us a call at 1-888-WAIT-WAIT. That's 1-888-924-8924. And now, let's welcome our first listener contestant. Hi, you're on Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me.
Hi, this is Graham calling from Pittsburgh.
Oh, hello, Graham. Welcome to the show. What do you do in Pittsburgh?
I'm an electrical engineer.
No way. Oh. Electrical engineer showing up strong. Graham, I want you to know my late grandfather was an electrical engineer, and he always used to describe me as very handsome. I'm really teeing you up to call me handsome, but that's okay. We'll move on. Graham, I want to introduce you to our panel. First up, we have a comedian whose newest stand-up special, Vacation Baby, is streaming on YouTube. It's Hari Kondabolu.
Hello, Graham.
And next, we have a writer for the show Big Mouth, and season 7 of that show is now out on Netflix. Say hi to Shantira Jackson. And finally, a writer whose hit Substack is called Take Another Little Piece of My Heart. It's Roy Blunt Jr.
Keep right.
Welcome to the show, Graham.
Right.
You're going to play Who's Bill this time. Bill Curtis is going to read you 3 quotes from this week's news. If you can correctly identify or explain 2 of them, you'll win our prize. Any voice from our show you choose on your voicemail. Are you ready?
I am.
Yeah. Your first quote is about the hot style trend that swept the Republican National Convention this week.
We're helping President Trump set a new fashion statement.
That was a woman attempt, and he could shoot a man in the ear on 5th Avenue. And I think it's so nice that in
healthcare all of a sudden. That's crazy. Bandages? Where did you get those? Obamacare?
Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. He offers Americans a refreshing change. Because do you realize it's been more than 3 years since we've had a white man vice president?
We tried everything else.
This was truly a unifying pick from Donald Trump, somehow bringing together both the Proud Boys and the Klan.
I never thought I would laugh at the Klan.
Have you been following the news about J.D. Vance at all?
Yeah, I followed it and then I turned it off.
People talk about wanting politicians you could have a beer with, and I just want to say J.D. Vance is a politician I want to cover my beer around.
But to Donald Trump Jr., he's a politician you can have a beard with.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
That one's for all the dads in the crowd. Graham, your next quote is from Indian billionaire Mukesh Ambani, who just spent $600 million on a big event.
This is the last one of these we're doing.
Ambani was talking about an event he just paid for, which was the most expensive what ever.
Can I get a hint, please?
Yes, he wrote the check with the words, I do.
Wedding.
Yeah! The most expensive wedding in history took place last weekend. The groom is Anant Ambani, the son of India's richest man, and the bride is Radhika Merchant, who loves him for who he is.
Can we just address the fact I was not invited? Like, I really did expect to go, and I was very excited about it. And I heard they had a very nice porridge for dessert made of poor people.
If you spend $600 million on the wedding, don't ask me to get you nothing. I'm not giving you anything.
Yeah, it would be weird if you like gave them a toaster. No, but you get 4 pieces in it though.
I wonder how you spend that much money on a wedding.
I would love to find out. Anybody want to give it to me, and I will try my best.
Well, honestly, they had a lot of stuff. Like, reports say it cost almost $600 million, and it really showed, right? 2,000 people were invited. There were countless parties and events leading up to the wedding, and guests could choose between salmon, chicken, or, and I'm quoting from the invitation here, the last polar bear?
I read about this wedding. Justin Bieber performed, I believe.
Yes. The performances were by Justin Bieber, the Backstreet Boys, Katy Perry, and Rihanna, which means even the richest man in India has not bought a single new record in the last 50 years.
Do you know who didn't perform there? It was me, because I wasn't.
They ran out of money.
Man, they really can't get divorced. They really, that
costs twice as much.
All right, Graham, here's your last quote.
Tornado people are battening down the hatches.
That's a quote from Slate about the worry that what new movie will make amateurs try and chase tornadoes?
Twisters.
That's correct.
Got it.
blockbuster sequel to Twister, Twister's Even Twistier, is out now, and storm chasers are worried it'll lead to totally unqualified people chasing dangerous tornadoes. For their part, the tornadoes say, yum, 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 bring them on. Are any of you interested in seeing the movie or chasing tornadoes?
I'm black. I'm not chasing no tornado. That's wild. Listen, though, the closest thing I would ever do to chasing a tornado is like trying to hang out with Helen Hunt. She seems cool, but like I'm not doing that.
I could identify with running away from a tornado. That'd be just exciting.
Yes, yeah. But you could run away from anywhere. You could be like on a different continent and run.
Not run away. There's a difference between running and running away from a tornado.
Yeah, I guess
you're motivated. Nobody likes to run.
I feel like this is one of the lessons we learned in school. Don't chase tornadoes, right?
Yes.
Don't go chasing waterfalls. Please stick to the rivers and the lakes that you're used to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have any of you been near a tornado?
No, because the Indian contingent also would never do that.
I have come along after one, so when trees were down all over the road, and I was a busload of people had to get out and move the trees so we could drive up the road.
So you physically picked up and moved trees?
I myself picked up most of them. And then I picked up a couple of children so that they could pick them up. Actually, it could have been a movie. Now that I think about it, I'm going to get back home and write that.
I'll find a new one. Bill, how did Graham do?
He got 3 in a row, so he wins.
Graham, thank you so much for playing. Goodbye.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Right now, panel, time for you to answer some questions about this week's news. Roy, scientists have discovered that when a female bell frog doesn't like the mating song of a male frog, she will what?
She will, well, there was a thing in the paper or online about cannibalism of frogs. She will eat him.
That's correct.
That's great.
I am so proud.
I'm sure there are women in this room that have dated a musician that they just wanted to eat and get rid of.
This discovery was made, and this is true, when a biologist was out doing research and suddenly heard a male frog screaming. The biologist ran to the scene, and sure enough, a female was trying to eat the male frog's leg while pulling him into a hole. And I just want to say from personal experience, that sounds better than getting ghosted.
Do we know for sure that she was trying to kill him? Because dragging somebody from the leg, some people might call that foreplay. We don't know those frogs lie.
Yeah. And I'm realizing I don't know your life.
This is why Kermit only dated pigs.
Scientists say the males know this is a risk, but they still attempt their mating songs. So the corollary finding is frog sex must be mind-blowing. Coming up, somebody's gonna pay tribute in our Bluff the Listener game. Call 1-888-WAIT-WAIT to play. We'll be back in a minute with more of Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me from NPR.
Next time on Pulse, medical debt can ruin people's credit and land them in court.
If you fail to appear or otherwise answer, judgment by default may be taken against you.
Some doctors are pushing back against aggressive debt collection.
Are our hospitals doing right by patients?
How money impacts patient care.
Today at 2 p.m. here on News 88.7.
I'm Maria Hinojosa. Next time on Latino USA, we talk about astrology and how it can help us understand ourselves with Isa Nakazawa, host and resident astrologer at Futuro Studios, with our new show, Stars and Stars with Isa.
I hope that astrology is a reminder that we don't walk alone.
That's next time on Latino USA.
Tonight, 7 p.m. on News 88.7.
On
Christopher Kimball from Mill Street Radio. State fairs are some of the biggest and most elaborate food events in the world. 1 million people show up for corn dogs and cow shows. What could possibly go wrong?
Thunderstorms, lightning. Ted Nugent had to have a root canal earlier that day, so he was not in a good frame of mind.
Behind the Fair, coming up this week on Mill Street Radio from PRX.
Today at 1 p.m. on News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations and Workday. With AI at the core of its system, Workday is committed to delivering continuous innovation to prepare organizations for what's next. Workday, an enterprise platform for finance and HR. BritBox, dedicated to helping people discover a world of British TV, including new original crime thriller Blue Lights, set in the streets of modern Belfast, streaming at BritBox.com/NPR. And BetterHelp, committed to supporting mental health through therapy and helping clients find balance. Clients are matched with one of 35,000 therapists for online therapy from anywhere at BetterHelp.com/public. From NPR and WBEZ Chicago, this is Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, the NPR News Quiz. I'm Bill Curtis. We're playing this week with Shantira Jackson, Roy Blunt Jr., and Hari Kondabolu. And here again is your host at the Studebaker Theater in Chicago, Illinois, filling in for Peter Sagal, Karen Chief.
It's time for the Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me Bluff the Listener game. Call 1-888-WAIT-WAIT to play our game on air, or check out the pinned post on our Instagram page at WaitWaitNPR. Hello, you're on Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me.
Hi, this is Jen from Silver Spring, Maryland.
Wow, hi Jen. Jen, what do you do in Silver Spring?
I really want to say something funny, but I work at the tax court in Washington, D.C., which doesn't exactly lend itself to humor or fun at parties.
Jen, that's actually really exciting, though, because I got an extension on my taxes this year. But you probably already knew that.
Oh, good for you. Good job.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to have you with us, Jen. You're here to play our game in which you must try to tell truth from fiction. So what's the topic, Bill?
It's a tribute.
Everybody loves a tribute, whether it's Elton John writing Candle in the Wind for Marilyn Monroe, or Elton John half-assing Candle in the Wind again for Princess Diana. Our panelists are going to tell you about another fitting tribute in the news, so pick the real one and you'll win the Wait Waiter of your choice on your voicemail. Are you ready to play?
I'm ready to play.
Great. First up, we've got Hari Kondabolu.
Former German Chancellor Angela Merkel is the star of a new detective show. Bored with retirement and unwilling to try pickleball, a fictionalized version of the stateswoman spends her retirement baking cakes and solving heinous murders in the town she lives in. It's like Murder, She Wrote, except it's with Angela Merkel. And is completely insane. According to the Financial Times, the fictionalized Merkel is joined on screen with a farting pig named Helmut, which I'm sure is funny for Germans. This is the second attempt at a TV show with a world leader as a star, after the late Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi's show, Silvio's Sex Party, which was exactly what you imagine it was. The Merkel show is a hit in Europe and is hitting the Italian market this week. As we all know, when Italy and Germany agree on something, there's no way they could possibly be wrong. That was a flawless read. Thank you.
So that was a TV show about Inspector Angela Merkel from Hari Kondabolu. Your next story is of a celebrity being celebrated that comes from Shantira Jackson.
Spicy cuisine is all the rage in Bangkok, which is why this month the Bangkok Art and Culture Center opened an exhibit to celebrate the hottest person in hot food, the inventor of Flamin' Hot Cheetos, Richard Montanez. The tour of the exhibit starts by letting people taste all of the variations Montanez came up with before the final final hot Cheetos recipe. But before you even taste one spicy morsel, you have to sign a waiver that dismisses the Cultural Center from any liability in case eating the hot Cheetos results in permanent loss of taste, smell, eyesight, hearing, or touch. Right. Yes, touch, because that spicy red stuff can literally burn the fingerprints right off your hands. The new original Thai flavors include, oh wow, buddy, that's hot. Hey, that burns like hell. And the most infamous, someone please call an ambulance, my husband is having a heart attack. Each flavor offers a rich experience for the Flamin' Hot Pro and novice alike. The Richard Montanez Flamin' Hot exhibit will be open until the end of summer 2024 unless someone actually dies. Then it will close immediately.
And that was new Flamin' Hot flavors from Shantira Jackson. Your last story is of a salute in the news, and it comes from Roy Blunt Jr.
His name is Psy, spelled P-S-Y, and he sang and danced whoop whoop Gangnam Style. It looked a little like horseback riding and a little like being the horse. Generally a lot of bow-legged dancing around, and it captivated the whole wide world. Whoop 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 Gangnam Style. It was the first billion-selling music video. And Psy has not done much ever since. But this week, Psy was honored by the International K-Pop Institute as original god of crypto-Asian mood.
And then continue straight on.
Gangnam Style.
Go straight
okay,
on.
Jen, so you've got TV detective Angela Merkel, new Flamin' Hot flavors, and Gangnam Style cryptocurrency. Which one of these three do you think is the real story?
I'm going to go with Psy.
So your choice is Roy's story about K-pop legend Psy. To find out the correct answer, we spoke to a reporter who covered the real story.
The Germans have come up with this comedy show which features a fictionalized Angela Merkel solving all kinds of unsolved murders.
That was a tricky one, Jen. That was a tricky one.
Oh my God, you totally lost me at the pig.
The voice you just heard, that was Guy Shazan, the Berlin bureau chief for the Financial Times, talking about Merkel she wrote. I'm so sorry, Jen, but Hari did have the real answer. You didn't win, but that's okay. You did earn a point for Roy. Jen, thank you so much for playing with us.
Thank you so much. Bye.
And now it's time for the game we call Not My Job. With 5 Olympics and 11 Olympic medals to her name, Allison Felix is one of the greatest track and field athletes of all time. And she'll be back at the Olympics again this year, not to compete, but to launch the game's first ever nursery for athletes with children. And hopefully that doesn't mean she has to watch them all herself. Allison Felix, welcome to Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me.
Go straight on.
So you're headed to Paris tomorrow?
I am, yeah. All packed up, ready to go.
Wow, how are you preparing for a trip like that?
It's really different this time because, usually I'm used to I just have to get myself ready, but this time my entire family is coming, so a little bit more stressful on the packing front, but we're getting there.
You've been to the Olympics many times before, and I wondered, of all the ones that you've been to, which one was your favorite?
Tokyo actually sticks out to me because it was my last. It was kind of a full circle moment. It was my first as a mother and competing in shoes that my company made and overcoming a lot of adversity. So that one is it's just super meaningful.
Are there stereotypes of Olympians by sport? I don't know, you're ooh, the gymnasts are always too cool, but the swimmers are all nerds, kind of a thing.
A little bit of that, I think it's the sprinters are flashy and like that. A little bit, I guess.
Yeah. So if you think the sprinters are flashy, what other sport do you think would be besties with sprinters?
Ooh, I mean, basketball, you know, I feel like we're really kind of in line. Or maybe that's just me, like, wishfully thinking.
No, it makes sense.
Basketball is my first love, so I feel like in my head, like, we go hand in hand.
Wait, I didn't realize basketball was your first love. I have questions about this because I read online that you found out you were good at track because you were trying to make new friends at a new high school, right?
Yeah, that's right. I just went out for the team to meet people, but I came out for basketball before that.
Gotcha.
And like very quickly, it was clear that like that was not my gift. So
everyone's like passing the ball, but you're just sprinting up and down the court.
Yep.
Did you end up making a lot of friends from track and field in high school?
I did. That part was successful. I met my like best girlfriends to this day. They were all in my wedding. We see each other. We try to see each other every month. So yeah, that part worked out.
That's amazing. So at what point in your life did you realize, even if your basketball skills weren't the greatest, when did you realize that you had a superhuman talent for running?
It happened pretty quickly. So I came out for the team in 9th grade. And then the first year after I graduated, I found myself in the Olympics. So it was kind of a
Allison, that's so incredible. I love that so much. And I just want to say for the record, I've never tried track and field, so I'm going to try and I'll be at the next Olympics, I'm sure. I have a question, which is, so I love watching the games on television from my couch, and I always see athletes, but especially runners, kind of like murmuring to themselves right before they start a race. Do you do that? What are you saying to yourself?
I do. I'm like talking to myself. I think some people are like hyping themselves up. For me, I am like technical thoughts. I'm like, okay, drive, because you're talking about coming out of the blocks, keep your head down. I just like to give myself a few cues so that I can make sure like I'm locked in and those are the things I need to be thinking about.
Wow, and then when you're actually running, are you also actively thinking, or are you sort of letting muscle memory take over?
At that point, I am. I have like cues at each point in the race. I'm thinking like what I need to be doing when I hit certain like markers. But sometimes if like your mind can wander to a place that's not good. Sometimes like in the 400, which is a race that I feel like it's just way too long.
I agree.
Sometimes if I'm running that race, I might get to like at the 100 meters and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm already tired. Still that's not good.
Olympians are just like us.
Yeah. We agree. We both think the 400 meters is too long. What is the dream distance for you?
200 meters, it's my favorite. I've always used to call it my baby, but then like I had a baby and I was like, maybe.
Super fair. Is there anything that you're looking forward to doing in Paris?
I've always been obsessed with gymnastics, and my daughter started doing gymnastics, so I'm really excited to take her to watch Simone Biles.
Oh my God! Is your daughter also very athletic?
I'm seeing glimpses of it. You know, I'm trying to keep her away from the track, so I'm like do everything else. But when I told her that we were gonna go see Simone, she like had questions. She was like, "Well, am I gonna get to go out on the balance beam?" Like, maybe not quite yet.
Those are really good questions, though. I love that she's so excited. I also feel like, why not? Let her give it a try. I had a question, which is, because you run professionally, when you have to run for stuff in your everyday life, like if you're late for the bus or something, are you kind of just like, oh, now I'm doing work for free?
Sprinters are actually the slowest walkers ever. It's actual, so I don't know. Yeah, we don't like to go fast anywhere else but on the track.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Olympians, just like us.
That's fantastic. All right, Allison, we've asked you here to play a game we're calling
200 meters? How about these meters?
You've won many medals racing the 200 meter and the 400 meter, so we thought we'd ask you about the parking meter. If you answer 2 out of 3 questions correctly about one of the last things you can use coins for, you will win a prize for one of our listeners, the voice of any one of us on their voicemail. Bill, who is Allison playing for?
Brennan Schmidt of Concord, New Hampshire.
All right, Allison, here's your first question. A man named Charles Mysak has sold used books on a New York street corner since the 90s, and he found the parking meter there very convenient in what way? A, he has sold over 1 million 25-cent postcards to people who needed change for the meter. B, he stored his books in the car, which he kept in the same parking spot for 11 years, feeding the meter every day. Or C, he protected his crate of valuable rare books by locking it to the meter with a bike lock.
Let's go with A.
Oh, would you want to guess again?
B?
Yes, correct. That is correct. He parked in the same space for 11 years, only moving the car for street cleanings. I guess finally someone else zipped in there real fast. All right, Allison, here's your next question. In the state of Florida, parking meters aren't just for cars. You are also required by law to feed the meter when? A, when you tie an alligator to the parking meter. B, when you are drinking rum on the sidewalk. Or C, when you are saving good seats for the 4th of July parade.
C. I mean, that's clever.
Oh, we're gonna give you a second try.
I wish I could do this in the Olympics. Don't even remember. A?
Yes, that's correct. A is correct. So if you see an alligator on the sidewalk, park there, the meter is already paid. Here is your last question. A New York parking enforcement officer was sent to jail after he embezzled over $90,000 in quarters that he collected from meters over the course of 5 years. How was he finally caught? A, he got a hole in his pocket and police followed a trail of coins to his house. B, he was overheard on his collection route saying, "One for you, a one for me." Or C, the bank in town called the police and said, "Hey, this guy in a parking enforcement uniform keeps..."
C.
Yes, that's correct. What was he supposed to do? Go back to the office with all those quarters in his pockets? No, you walk right into the back in uniform and deposit them. Bill, how did Allison do on our quiz?
She broke the tape and won all 3 races.
Allison Felix is one of the greatest sprinters of all time, a multiple world and Olympic champion. Allison, thank you truly so much for joining us on Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. In just a minute, why some jeans are feeling blue. It's our Listener Limerick Challenge. Call 1-888-WAIT-WAIT to join us on air. We'll be back in a minute with more of Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me from NPR.
From Austin to Houston, Dallas to San Antonio, Marfa, El Paso, and in bureaus across the Lone Star State, reporters are pulling together the stories and the voices of people making news right now, right here in Texas. I'm David Brown, inviting you to join us for a complete view of today's events when it's Texas Standard Time.
The Texas Standard, weekdays at 10 a.m. on News 88.7.
Life coming at you fast? Many times, there's not enough hours in the day to follow all of Houston's news. When you find yourself too busy to stay informed, we have 2 words for you. Hello, Houston. A daily newsletter delivered right to your inbox from Houston Public Media. Every morning, we bring you a quick recap of the previous day and a look ahead at the current day's news. Sign up today at houstonpublicmedia.org/HelloHouston.
Some things in life are difficult, but making a difference in our community shouldn't be. Why not take your old or unused vehicle and donate it to Houston Public Media? Take something you're not using and turn it into something you can't get enough of. We'll handle the paperwork, provide free contactless pickup of your car, and issue you a tax receipt. If it's not in the best condition, don't worry about it. We'll take it. Call 877-252-0436 or donate online at houstonpublicmedia.org/vehicles.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations and Indeed, designed to be an end-to-end hiring solution for businesses of all sizes to attract, interview, and hire candidates, all from one platform. Learn more at Indeed.com/NPR. Smart Mouth, committed to the prevention of bad breath for 24 hours with zinc ion technology. Smart Mouth products can be found nationwide at drugstores, grocery stores, and super centers, or at smartmouth.com. Raymond James, a firm focused on transforming lives, businesses, and communities through tailored wealth management, banking, and capital market solutions. Disclosures at raymondjames.com. From NPR and WBEZ Chicago, this is Wait, Don't Tell Me, the NPR News Quiz. I'm Bill Curtis. We're playing this week with Roy Blunt Jr., Hari Kondabolu, and Shantira Jackson. And here again is your host at the Studebaker Theater in Chicago, Illinois, filling in for Peter Sagal, Karen Cheek.
Here we are. Thank you, Bill. In just a minute, it's a winner-take-all contest of human versus limerick. If you'd like to play, give us a call at 1-888-WAIT-WAIT. That's 1-888-924-8924. But right now, panel, some more questions for you from the week's news. Roy, season 21 of The Bachelorette premiered this week, where one lucky woman gets to date multiple men in a glamorous fantasy. And this season, viewers noticed the mansion had a brand new feature. What?
Well,
Drive safe.
Thanks, everyone. Those of you already have their life to make you have to go free. Went back to the truck, started with Wichita. Started with Lisa. Let's get out of the almost here and I left break stop. Anyway, let's continue.
Turn right. Go straight on. Keep right, and then turn right. Turn right. Go straight on. Keep right, and then turn right. Turn right. And then turn right. Turn right. Get ready to turn left. Turn left. Finally, we are here. Okay, here we go. Get ready to turn right. Turn right. Keep left, and then turn left. Turn left. Left, and then turn left. Turn left. Go straight on. Keep right, and then turn right. Turn right. Keep left. Right, and then exit right. Exit right. Recomputing. Keep left. Finding a new route. Keep right, and then turn right. Turn right. Keep left. Keep right, and then exit right. Exit right. Go straight on. Keep right, and then exit right. Exit right. Keep left, and then turn left. Turn left. Get ready to turn right. Turn right. It's all over now.